Thanks for joining us. I'm Brian DeFelice from the Morrill Memorial Library. Joining me in the studio is Lydia Sampson, Technical Services Librarian, who's here to talk about her upcoming program, Chernobyl, Then and Now, which will be presented by Serhii Plokhy, author of the book Chernobyl, History of a Tragedy, which will be happening at the library February 6th at 6:30 p.m. in the Simone Room. Lydia, thank you so much for coming in and speaking with me today.
Thanks for having me.
So, most people for their vacation will go to Cape Cod or they'll go to Florida. You went to Chernobyl. Why was that?
Well, I love travel. I travel a lot. It's a passion of mine. And I guess my interest in travel involves going to more off the beaten path places. I really like to learn things and just see the unusual. I kind of figure that when I'm in my 80s, I'll make it to London and to Paris,
but you want to go off the beaten path first.
Yeah, I want to have some adventures while I'm able.
So, what were some of the things that you saw in Chernobyl? What inspired you to go there?
Well, I knew about the abandoned town of Chernobyl and also Pripyat. There was the town, the Eastern European rural farm town of Chernobyl, and when they built the nuclear power plant in the Ukraine, and when it was part of the Soviet Union, they went to that area and they constructed a city from scratch.
Wow.
It was called Pripyat, and it was for the builders of the power plant and then for the workers.
Okay.
So this was a brand new city, and it was really so far above and beyond the living conditions that most people had in the Soviet Union. And I knew that after the explosion in 1986, that it had Chernobyl, the town, and the whole surrounding area, including Pripyat, had been abandoned. Within 3 days, they evacuated thousands of people.
So it's like a ghost town or ghost city, if you will.
Exactly.
Wow.
And it's a time capsule. It's really fascinating. And I had heard that even though it's a designated exclusion zone, there's barbed wire around it, and there are security checkpoints. Some researchers go there, but it is
definitely off the beaten path.
Yeah, but I knew that with authorized tours and guides and with the proper permits that it was possible to go there.
Awesome.
So I wanted to.
Sounds like a wonderful experience. So how did you get in contact with Serhii Plokhy, and how did you get this this program together?
Well, there's a radio program on WBZ that I really like. It's called J Talking with Bradley J. Unfortunately, it's on from midnight until 5 a.m. when I usually can't listen to it, but you can listen to the podcast of it. Serhii Plokhy he's the author of the book that you mentioned. A quick correction on the title. It's Chernobyl, History of a Nuclear Catastrophe.
Sorry.
And it was just published in 2018. It's really a comprehensive history of Chernobyl from its inception through the tragedy and the aftermath. So he was a guest on the J Talking show, and so I contacted Bradley J to find out more about him and get in touch with him. Fortunately, he's local. He's a professor at Harvard University, and he lives in Arlington. So I was able to contact him and ask whether he'd be interested in doing a program together, because he's also he is the expert on the history, and he's also been there recently, as have I. So I thought that we could do an interesting program called Then and Now, talking about how it all came to happen, and from 1986 through
Up till now.
present time, what has happened there.
What would you like people to take away from the program?
Well, I was thinking that young people maybe have never even heard of Chernobyl, or
Right.
maybe they've heard the word but don't know about it.
Right.
And people in my generation, in your generation, maybe know, oh, that was a major nuclear disaster, but don't know the details. And I think often when there is a crisis, a natural disaster, even with wars and all kinds of catastrophic situations, people forget.
Right.
And I think it's really important to remember and to understand and to not repeat the mistakes of history. So I would just like to educate more people about more of the details about how this tragedy happened. I think Mr. Plokhy has some real insight into why it happened and how to avoid situations like that in the future.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to look at what it's like 30 plus years later there. And it's also, I realized that when I got back from the trip, people just really, what was it like? Can you show me some photos? That sounds crazy. I mean, we went we went into these abandoned buildings. There's an abandoned hospital, abandoned sports arena, schools, and there's still people's homes, apartments.
They just left it all behind.
One of the iconic photos is the big Ferris wheel, because it happened right before May Day. They were preparing for May Day festivities and had the carnival in town, and those celebrations never happened, but there's still rusted out bumper cars and Ferris wheel, and there's still a lot of stuff inside. So you're going through an old school, and there's children's books just covering the floor, and then also dolls and stuffed animals and shoes, and it's kind of poetic in a way to see that with your own eyes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming in. I'm sure that it's going to be a very well-attended program.
I'm excited for it.
Thank you.
Thank
Again,
you.
I'm joined by Lydia Sampson, who's here to talk about the program Chernobyl, Then and Now, which will be presented by local author Serhii, which will be happening at the Morrill Library February 6th at 6:30 p.m. in the Simone Room. Registration is limited, so reserve your space today by visiting our website at norwoodlibrary.org or calling us at 781-769-0200. And as always, if you'd like more information about this event or any event sponsored at the library, please visit our website at norwoodlibrary.org.